got a couple of names written down here,
Mhm.
and it's their two riders. We've got Frankie Morbidelli, Fabio
Yep.
Quartararo. Frankie's perhaps the more interesting one here because for a long time, it was like, how desperate does he want that? Can he convince Yamaha to keep him? And now there's a little bit of, well, what are you going to do to keep me? What can you show me that's going to make me want to stay, rather than he's probably got stuff lined up over on a Ducati, which he'd probably rather be on. So, and if Yamaha can't keep Frankie, where do they go?
Yeah, that's the thing with Frankie. And I think the big noise that I've sort of seen and what I've sort of heard around is that he's trying with Grassini or VR46. Obviously, that would mean Bezzecchi or Marini would have to move on from VR46, more likely Bez. And Grassini would mean Di Antonio be on his way out, or Alex Marquez maybe. So Morbidelli, I'm assuming you've seen it. The big interview where he said, "Do I want to stay at Yamaha?" Rather than sort of thing of, I want to stay at Yamaha, asking back to Jack Appleyard, I think was doing the interview, and sort of turned around and said, "Do I want to stay there?" And it was the most awkward
Yeah.
interview I've ever
And
seen.
that is what has sort of prompted me to start thinking about this, because there was a time there where he would have snapped their hands off to
Yeah.
stay another year, and now they're going to be like, well, if we don't have him, who have we got?
Well, yeah, because he's also said, I've got a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C for where I'll be in MotoGP. Whether that is just him calling Yamaha's bluff, trying to make them sort of go, actually, if we get rid of him, we might be stuck here a little bit, because he's still 11th in the championship. So he's
Well,
not.
I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, he's. Oh, God, I'll do maths. He's
He's ahead
7
of
points
Fabio, isn't
behind
he?
Fabio. No, he's 7 points
Oh,
behind
he's
Fabio.
behind. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's close. It's only 7 points
Yeah.
in it. I think before the start of the season, you had him down as the biggest gap between Fabio and Franco, I think.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Whereas I think they might be the closest in terms of teammates at the moment, actually. So
that's typical for me. So I needed to predict, because I really love Morbidelli. I think he's brilliant.
yeah,
But I almost needed him to not back him, just to get him to perform.
yeah.
Like,
And
you watch, if I put him in my fantasy team or something, he'd just crash.
I can't quite figure it out with the whole of that squad. I think he is most likely to move on than Fabio. Fabio's got a contract, has sacked his manager though, which I found interesting. I don't know if he's sacked or if he's parted ways with his manager.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the official wording is as such. But Fabio, will be dealing with his own contract for the 2024-2025 period. So it looks like he's trying to get out of Yamaha, which I found interesting. Whether his manager pushed for him to stay at Yamaha when he potentially had offers to go elsewhere at the last contract period. So yeah, Fabio's got one more year at that team. Looks like it's going to be another year that he's not going to enjoy. And Franco could end up on a Ducati, and I think he would honestly do well there as well.
I agree. I think it would be excellent on a Ducati. I hope it would be anyway.
Yeah.
But if he goes there, I'm also going to predict that he's going to be shit, so that he does well, because he has to do the opposite of whatever I say, apparently. And so if Frankie moves on,
mm-hmm.
where can Yamaha look? I mean, I know, are they in the opposite position of Honda, where they actually need someone that's experienced?
But then
or is it because it's with that bike, it's it just needs the next step. It's always fundamentally been good to ride, and it's got that Yamaha DNA. Does it just need someone with a bit of know-how coming across from a Ducati or something, like what Miller's done over at KTM, and just give them that last little piece of the puzzle, of just feedback and, this is what we did there, this is what we could do here? Or do they need a fresh approach as well?
See, I have a couple names that I've thought of already, because obviously we've discussed this as well before. One name that a lot of people would probably now be thinking is Jake Dixon. Obviously, that fresh face coming through. Really good friends with Fabio, so the garage would be a good atmosphere. Is my thought behind Jake. Also, he's got, he's a race winner now, so he clearly has talent. He's coming of age in Moto2 now, I think. Been on that Yamaha before, back in 21, I think it was, around Silverstone. Didn't do much, but that was his first throw. He's thrown in the deep end, didn't have any testing
Yeah,
at it.
just a
So
sub ride, wasn't it?
yeah, it was
So
kind of expected. The other name where you've just said about from a Ducati, and I'd only just thought of this just now, Johan Zarco is a name I'm going to throw out there. His contract ends with Pramac at the end of this season. Martin has said he's not moving from Pramac now. Ducati say they're pretty confident. Could Zarco potentially go back to Yamaha? Is one
I
thing I'm
think he's an
thinking.
interesting puzzle piece
Yeah.
because if Frankie, obviously, and you know that Frankie is walking straight onto a Ducati somehow if he walks out of Yamaha. And I
Mm.
don't think he is bluffing when he says he's got options because that Rossi Academy, they're not that whole management thing. They're not letting him leave MotoGP like that, right? Um, they're gonna make space for it, and I think the obvious move is for them to try and obviously get Bez out of that team and up to a Pramac. I would suggest maybe it's up, maybe it's sideways these days, but up to a Pramac. Um, as your next step is then the factory team, and obviously Martin's doing as well as he is. He's not going to want to move to a struggling bike. And in order to make that happen, Zarco's the one that's going to have to move. And as good as I think Zarco is, he's like being an older guy. If you're thinking we can't lose this talent to another manufacturer, the obvious move is always to move on the oldest guy, right?
Yeah.
And he's out of contract, and it's like, well, he's had all this time to win a race, and even though he can podium consistently and be right up there in the points kind of thing, he's never going to crack it for you, is he? He's done well for him, and he's been good, but I think they'd be happiest to move him on rather than anyone, really, just the point he's at in his career. So, and I think Frankie always has somewhere to go, and I think that is the move. I think you bang on. And Zarco will take a factory ride at this point in his career, I think.
Yeah, he's had one factory ride before. Everyone forgets it
Mm.
when he was at
Yeah, it
KTM.
was a bit,
Yeah,
bit of a failure to launch, wasn't it?
yeah. But I mean, does he want to go back to Yamaha? It didn't end in bad blood between him and Yamaha. They just never offered him a factory ride at the time because Rossi was there. And now there's the thing of, do they offer him that factory ride? Does he take it for money for the last couple of seasons of his career? Gets on with Fabio as well. So,
Mm.
the two that I'm thinking of, Dixon and Zarco, they both bring harmony to that garage. Obviously, the French duo, and you see Quattararo and Dixon get on really well. So I think either way, if you go to one of those two options, it's going to work in sort of, there won't be any rivalry in that garage, if it makes sense. So they'll find a way to make it work rather than competing against each other.
Is Bastianini in any kind of trouble?
See, I would say yes, personally, but I know Paolo Ciabatti has said that they're going to stick with Bastianini, so it doesn't look like he's in any trouble because he said sort of, which I sort of agree with, it would be unfair to get rid of him after an injury-filled season. So they want to give him the rest of the season to get back into the groove of things, and then next season will be his proper, like, he's going to have one shot at it, I think, which is where it's going to get even tougher for Bastianini if he's not on the pace next year. He's going to have 1 year to get his head down, prove he should be there. Otherwise, Martin or Bez is getting that seat, I reckon.
Yeah, and I think he'll probably almost, like I said, I don't think it's in the Ducati thing to want to be that ruthless with him. I don't think they're like that. Um, so I think he's probably fine for this year. I don't think it's an issue. But I think a part of their thinking in their mind will be how does he kick on after the 5 week break? Because it's a bit of a reset for him now.
Mm.
You want to see him coming back now and being a bit further to the front. Uh, but it would be bizarre to see a guy like him, as good as he was last season, for that to be kind of a one hit wonder type thing.
Mm.
It would be really weird because for all money, he looks, well, based on last season, looks the goods. Like he's going to be a top guy. And it'll be very strange. I suppose it's almost it's kind of what happened to Frankie. Could have sworn that season where he's finished second in the championship. You're like, this guy's going to be massive. He's going to be a star. He's going to win world titles. And, and it only takes one injury riddled season. Your bike's maybe not as good or whatever the next season, whatever it is. And it can derail you a bit. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen to him because and like I said, based on last season, he looks so much like a big time rider for me. But
Yeah,
then this season, I expected him to be better by now, to be honest. I come back from the injury. Maybe that is a bit too high expectations, but I have expected a little bit more these last sort of 2-3 races, um, especially the last couple, because he's been on it a bit more now. But yeah, he'd definitely get another go next season. But with these two going so good, how long can you hold them back?
yeah.
And this is where that sort of rider academy thing. There's one fault in this system, and KTM's seen it. You see it with Red Bull over in Formula One. There's sometimes guys come through quicker than you can find places for them. Now you look at Ralph Fernandez and KTM moving guys on too quickly, and now where do they put Pedro Acosta? Does Augusto Fernandez go, or do you move on Paul Espargaro after he barely even touches the circuit? Never gets on the bike. He broke every bone in his bloody body. Now they're going to be
Mm.
like, well, sorry, mate. By the end of the mid-season break, we're going to have signed a deal where we move you on and bring Pedro in.
See, yeah, that's the big talking point, and it's something that I've been trying to look at a lot. Like whenever I see an article about it, I try and read it to see what the current rumor is. Obviously, we've had the rumor that Paul Espargaro is going. We've had the rumor that Augusto Fernandez is going. And then there's rumors come along that KTM are going to bring in a third team. I'd like that because it would mean there'd be two extra bikes on the grid again.
I
But
agree.
the big stopping point is Dorna want those two extra bikes for another manufacturer. They want someone else to come in and compete in MotoGP, whether it be BMW, Suzuki, hell, even if Triumph make a MotoGP team. It's just they want someone else on that grid as well to fill Suzuki's slots. So I don't think, unless KTM offered them a lot of money, or if KTM developed a Husqvarna, like an actual Husqvarna MotoGP bike, it's the only way, or MV, because they're in part of that now. It's the only way I could see it working. But I don't think they'll allow it, to be honest. So I think the only way they can do it now is Acosta's either going to go to Ducati, Honda, or KTM. But then again, the thing is of who goes from where. I don't see Acosta wanting
Yeah.
to go to Yamaha. Aprilia are pretty happy with Ralph Fernandez, which surprises me. Um, so then it's the thing of I think if I had to get rid of one of the KTM riders, I'd get rid of Paul. And it seems harsh, but I think you need that cutthroat sort of mentality when dealing with someone like bringing
Oh, they're
Pedro
not scared of
Acosta
that,
in.
mate. Don't worry
No,
about them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're
But
not scared of that.
you need to do it to bring in someone like Pedro Acosta. You can't miss out on Pedro Acosta, is the way that I see
No,
it.
no, no. This is too.
Um,
And I think this is where it's strange because they were that cutthroat to bring in Augusto Fernandez, who, let's be honest, got done in by Raul Fernandez and Remy when they were all there at Moto 2. And they were that cutthroat to bring him in and Pole. Now, it would be absolutely the biggest change of heart of all time to be like, we're actually going to be the good guys now and be like, we're going to be loyal to the guys we've signed on, blah, 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 and give them another chance when you've got potentially the next big MotoGP star on your hands. You've got him. And am I correct in saying that there's something in Pedro's contract there where if he meets certain performance criteria, he is entitled to the ride, and has he met those targets already?
I think the exact thing in his contract is he has until. Oh, actually, it's coming up. It's the end of this month, which is a couple of days now from when we're recording this. I don't know when this will get
So
uploaded.
good timing by us. There's going to be some big news in a couple of days, and we've missed it.
Probably, but I think it was by I don't know how many days are in June. I think it was the 30th of June that KTM. Yeah, 30th of
Yep.
June. KTM had to make space for Acosta or keep him in Moto 2. And Acosta had pretty much said now at this point, I'm coming to MotoGP with or without you. So
Yeah.
He obviously knows he has other options because he's not meant to be speaking to other manufacturers until after the 30th of June. Obviously, he will have been. His manager will have been. There's no way that he hasn't not
But
been
also, if
speaking.
you're him, surely you're confident enough to be able to go,
Yeah,
even if I've not spoken to anyone, I know they're probably going to want me.
every man. If you're Aprilia, if you're Yamaha, you want him on your bike. There's no way you'd want to miss out on Pedro Acosta. He is
And for me,
generational.
he's one of those. Yeah, I was going to say, for me, he's one of those talents that usually when they come through like that, they're going straight onto factory rides. Some of them,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
there's no messing about in like we'll move you through the teams to get no, not with guys when they come through with that kind of ability, the way that Pedro's come through. A lot of the time, they go straight into factory rides, and
yeah,
even for him to go, oh KTM, I want your seat, I want whatever seat you find, and they put him on the gas. I still think he could probably go and be like, well, I could just get on a factory Yamaha or something, you know? So, and I know he probably want to be on the most competitive bike possible, so he probably would take that. But yeah, it is one of those things where usually these kind of talents, they go straight into factory rides if they're that good.
yeah. I will compare Pedro Acosta right now to the likes of Rossi, Lorenzo, Marquez. At this point, it
Yeah.
appears, and
Lorenzo was the one that came to mind for me when he went straight into
yeah,
the Yamaha.
Mark went straight into Repsol, and Pedrosa went straight into Repsol Honda as well after doing well in the smaller classes. So my thoughts immediately go to them and comparing Pedro to them. But there is also the thing of satellite bikes are strong nowadays. I mean, we talked about Martin and Bezecchi. So if KTM want, I guess, and if they can afford to, they could put a full factory bike, they could put a full factory spec gas KTM on the grid for Acosta. Augusto, you can get given the 20, what would it be, the 2023 spec, but give Acosta a full out and out factory bike and give him all the updates as they come throughout the season. So
Like
that could work.
Valentino 2000, 2001.
Yeah, with the Nastro Zero Honda. Yeah, that was yeah. It would work, I think, and I think Acosta would be fighting.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Not his first season might be. I'm not sure. Rookies don't tend to do great in their first season with KTM. That's my only worry if he goes down that route. Yeah, but no, I think he could do well. Give him they won't lock him in for any longer than 2 years, and I don't think he would want to be out of the cycle with everyone else. Actually, I think only 1 year because he wouldn't want to be out of cycle with everyone else because he'd be
So I think
thinking then.
they might push for two, but
Well, yeah, I think they
he might go for one.
their best move would be to contract him to KTM rather than contracting him to the Gas Tech Free team. Because you look at like Alex Marquez, who's contracted to Grassini and not Ducati. So if they get rid of Alex Marquez from Grassini, they don't need to put him anywhere in like Superbike, say. So I think Acosta's
Yeah.
best bet would be sign with KTM and try it for a 1 year deal because then you could try and wiggle your way onto a Ducati or something.
And I like his I like his attitude here as well. He's got a bit
Yeah,
of something about him, Pedro, where he's just going, you know what, you can do what you want, but I'm coming up,
yeah,
right? Uh, you can either make room or I'm going somewhere else. There's no messing about here, mate. Like I'm coming. Make room or miss out.
yeah.
And I think that's brilliant because he's absolutely. What's another year in Moto 2 going to do for him? Like
Mm,
I know he's not even winning the world championship, but like he's clearly the biggest talent on that grid. He's the biggest talent. So he spent a year there. He figured out his craft this year. Like I said, he's not leading the world championship, but it's only a matter of time before he is, I believe. Um, and when he wins, it is like domination, domination. Uh, and and then where is that the risk when you're, I think Binder's probably one of the safest seats on the grid, right? Because it's been quality for KTM for a long time. Is this where like a master stroke from Jack to get himself? Well, I say master stroke. He was on a factory Ducati, and maybe a satellite Ducati would have, or just been as strong anyway. But if your thing is you want to stay in a factory team, bit of a master stroke going to KTM right before they got good. Does that then? I mean, in a year's time, say we do move Pedro onto a gas, and he's really, really good, you know, does that mean Jack's next move is to either a satellite or a struggling factory?
See, yeah,
Because
I
Pedro's on that meteoric rise to the factory team, is he not?
yeah, that's the problem. I like Jack as well, and I know you like Jack as well. So
Well,
yeah, well, I I think there are problems that come up at this point now, and Jack I can see being one of those riders who bounces around factories throughout his whole career. I think of someone like I know it's slightly different, but someone like Melandri or Troy Corsa in Superbikes, where they sort of bounced about all over the place and sort of never really settled for a long period of time anywhere. Because Jack's done what he's done, Honda to Ducati and now to KTM, and I honestly could see him in a couple of years ending up at like Aprilia or back on a Honda or something like
yeah,
ridiculous like that.
yeah.
So it's just, but yeah, there's
And I
Pedro
think
Acosta. You can't
from
stop this rise.
he exactly, and he Jack strikes me as one of those guys as well, where as frustrating as he can be sometimes, where he shows so much speed and then like he's really inconsistent with his crashing and things like that. But with his experience, and now I think this will put him in really good standing with a lot of manufacturers that he's been able to go from one manufacturer to the other pretty seamlessly and pick up where he left off. And you have to say he's helped develop that bike this season in a way, because he looks so comfortable on it all straight away, and he's got great speed over a lap. I think that manufacturers kind of like that, and it's like he's a safe bet. So there's always going to be a job for him somewhere, but it's just he's also going to get like made obsolete by riders coming through that are a bit more exciting sometimes. Um, but yeah, but again, at the same time, some manufacturers will look across. You know, you might look across and go, "Our bike's really shit," and we know can just go on a thing and be comfortable, and he's got good feedback or whatever. So we could use that, but it'd be interesting to see how KTM play it, because in motorsport, this is one of it's not like football or anything like that where you can have academies and bring through as many players as you want because you got 11 places to fill on the team. You can bring guys off the bench and whatever. In motorsport, it's so different because you can have these queues of top young talents coming through and then have nowhere to put them all, and then go and sign guys from somewhere else to take your factory spot, and then bring guys back onto your satellite team like Pole, and then be like, now we just got to ditch them after a year because we've got a talent coming through that we knew was coming through, and we knew was probably going to do this to us, but we've done it anyway. So, and you know, they could have easily just left Remy on that another season rather than do what they've done. But that's the pros and cons of having that sort of academy style sort of thing of riders coming through. Um, and again, that's a video in itself. That kind of thing. I mean, that is fascinating kind of discussion. And look, I don't know if there's anyone else you want to bring up from MotoGP, but I've covered off pretty much everyone that I've got written down here and added some to it in the meantime.
I was
Um,
just I was
uh,
going to carry
yeah,
on
go
a
ahead.
trail of thought with the Red Bull thing and the KTM side of their youth academy and everything. Obviously, Moto 2, Acosta's the only one I can see there. I don't see Albert Arenas coming up. I think he'll get dumped out by them from Moto 2 at the end of this year. But then you look at, they've got Dennis Onchu, they've got Jose Antonio Rueda, they've got Danny Holgado, who's leading the Moto 3 Championship, all in Moto 3 under the Tech 3 and Red Bull banner. So then you look, what did he do with them? I think Holgado and Onchu go up to Moto 2 next year. And then you look and you think, well, they're going to want to come into MotoGP within the next 3-4 years, for example, if
Yeah,
they do well in Moto 2.
2, 3, 4 years. Yeah,
Yeah. So then they start that other issue again of, right, so now we've got, say, Binder, Acosta, Fernandez, and say they've got rid of Jack, someone else. Then there's the thing of, well, now what do we do? Because we've got these two who want to come through. And we say if Onchu's somehow sensational on a big bike, which I think he will be, um, we need to make room for him. I think he could get to GP, and that's it's worrying again because they keep bringing through these young riders that are brilliant, but then they keep losing them, like they did with Martin, who went to Ducati. So yeah, there's going to be problems year after year for them now.
so there is. I mean, it is one of the I mean, obviously, in theory, it makes sense to be like, get as much young talent under your umbrella as you can, and then you can pick what you want from it. But each time you have to get rid of one, that's somebody else's gain because you've not brought them through because they're shit. You've brought them through because they're class,
Yeah,
right? And straight away, within a year, of bringing them up to MotoGP, you're losing them to someone else. And there was the risk that like we mentioned, Raul Fernandez has not done well since going to Aprilia, but there was the risk that he was going to be a star over there. You know, and it could have happened. And then, like you said, with Martin, is a star in MotoGP now and one of the big talents. And they had to let him go because you just can't get everybody into these, and they'll be dying to get a third team in because that's just an extra 2 spots you can put these guys. But if they don't get it, 4 bikes is not a lot to get all these talents onto, and then they do have to move on. Jake Dixon at the weekends for me, and Jake and I get on really well.
yeah,
For me, has legitimized the conversation now of him going to MotoGP. For a long time, it was like British. He's British. He's going to get there one day because he's British. No, for me now, I think it's he'll get there one day because he's quite good at riding a motorcycle. So I think for me this weekend, he's. I don't know if I'd necessarily have him, not this season anyway, finishing ahead any higher than third. Um, Although if he keeps performing like that, there's no reason why he couldn't. But I don't think he catches it up. Generally he hasn't been quite as strong, but stringing together consistent podiums, winning races where you can, I think makes you a perfect candidate to step up.
yeah. Even though he is British, I still I agree with you along the lines of there's the thing of it wasn't really legit if he would make it or not, and if he would sink or swim. Really is the case in MotoGP. He had his one go when he was sort of still relatively new to the paddock, and he sank really when you compare how he did on that Yamaha, like we mentioned earlier. But I think now he's won that Grand Prix. He's getting podiums. He's had a run of podiums now, which is going well. So I think now's a good time. Maybe the end of next season would be a better time to move. And he's in the Gas brand as well. So he's under that KTM umbrella as well still. So again, an embarrassment of riches for KTM and the Gas brand.